What's up, it's Alpha Wolf with Wolfpack Gaming. I want to start off by apologizing for the lack of content lately. I'll definitely try to get some more content uploaded for you guys, but today's video is actually going to be another starter build, but this time for the Technomancer. I finally got all 4 classes to the endgame and into the higher challenge tiers for expeditions, so not only will I also have the starter build for the final class I need to cover, the Pyromancer, coming soon, but then I'll also begin working on upgraded build videos for each class. As a reminder, this is a starter build, so I've made sure that it's easy to replicate by not using any Legendaries or Tier 3 mods, but keep in mind, that also means it isn't optimized and is only designed to be a stepping stone to help you reach around Challenge Tier 10, give or take a tier or two depending on certain factors like individual skill level and whether you're playing solo or in a group. We'll begin by taking a look at the skills that the build utilizes, then move on to the gear and mods it requires to maximize its efficiency, follow that up by touching base on the class tree and important nodes you'll need, and then finally end the video with some gameplay of the build in action to show it all tied together and how it should actually be played. But before we start, if you enjoy the video and want to show your support, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that thumbs up button. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into it. This build is a firepower starter build simply because a bullet build for the Techno is fairly easy to set up and can be pretty efficient in the early challenge tiers without requiring crazy tier 3 mods or legendaries. So we'll be using blighted rounds, which will be our primary damage output, and we'll be pairing it with a specific mod which will essentially give us unlimited ammo, causing our blighted rounds to have 100% uptime. Next, we'll be using Cold Snap, which will primarily be used as a CC to freeze enemies in place, allowing us to get easy headshots to increase our damage output. Our final skill is Blighted Turret. The primary use for this is to increase weapon damage substantially with a node in our class tree, but it's also useful to distract enemies, as well as increase survivability by healing you with skills Life Leech whenever it causes damage. For our primary weapon, I prefer to use a tactical assault rifle due to the high damage output that they have, and since it's burst fire, it's also easier to maintain your ammo rather than something like an SMG. I would highly suggest not using an LMG or double gun. While they have large clips and it may be very easy to maintain ammo, they have pretty low damage. The mods on your weapon are really more of a personal preference, but I personally like Bone Shrapnel to cause substantial AoE damage every time I get a killing shot, and then Anomaly Enhancement, which will provide a passive firepower boost equal to 30% of your anomaly power. I'd highly recommend at least using Anomaly Enhancement, as this build uses an armor mod that pairs nicely with it. As far as attributes on the weapon, in my opinion, this AR is a god roll for this build with crit damage, because not only should we always be aiming for headshots to deal more damage, but we also use Cold Snap to freeze enemies and get some guaranteed crits regularly. Status Power, which increases the damage of our Toxic, which is always applied on our enemies due to 100% uptime on blighted rounds, and our Blighted Turret, and long range damage to simply increase our damage even more. For your armor, the attributes you'll want to keep an eye out for, which would be considered god roll attributes for this build, will be bonus firepower, long range damage, and close range damage. Moving on to the mods for the armor, we'll start with the headgear, which has one of the most important mods for this build, Toxic Lead. This is the mod which pairs with blighted rounds to give you unlimited ammo. Every killing shot to enemies afflicted with Toxic will cause 40% ammo to be replenished in your magazine. Without this mod, the build doesn't work. The second mod is Crit Stack, which causes crit shots to grant you bonus anomaly and firepower. For the chest piece, we want our defensive mods, which are Mitigation from Death and Damage Absorber, which will both boost your defenses and are two of the best tier 2 defensive mods you can get. You'll want to attempt to get both defensive mods on the same piece of gear if you can. By doing so, you can at least keep that one piece of gear upgraded as you progress to higher tiers. The reason to keep the gear upgraded is because these two mods actually scale off the level of the gear. The higher the gear's level, the higher the stats on the mods. The next piece of gear has Radical Therapy, which will essentially increase our total damage by 15% since we will always have Blighted rounds up. And then the Personal Space mod, which will increase our close range damage by 15% to help with the enemies that surround you. For this next piece of gear, the important mod here is Stand Tall, which increases our anomaly power and firepower whenever we're out of cover, which will be always. This is the mod that pairs with anomaly enhancement on our weapon. Since the mod increases anomaly and firepower both, it's actually boosting our firepower even more than it states due to the mod combination. The extra bullet mod can really be replaced with any mod of your choice, but I'd recommend using Freeze Boost to increase your damage against enemies that are frozen. The final mods are Bloodlust, which causes killing shots to substantially increase firepower, and Diffuse, which is another good defensive mod that not only increases your armor by a set amount, but also raises your resistance by 50% when sprinting. This is useful if you're trying to get out of a bad situation or need to head for cover. But you can also swap this mod out for a different one of your choice if you don't think you need 3 defensive mods. The final part of this build, before showing it in action, is the class tree. I'll be touching base on the most important nodes, but I won't be going over the entire tree, so make sure you either pause the video here or take a screenshot so you can copy the tree entirely. The first node that's incredibly important is Exposing Toxin, which causes enemies afflicted with Toxic to also be afflicted with Vulnerable, which causes them to take extra damage. Next is Marked for Execution, which will increase the effectiveness of Vulnerable by 40%, which is huge. Next, we have Assault Master, which will increase assault weapon damage by 20%. Near the end of the Pestilence tree is UT-14 Clips, which will increase our weapon magazine size by 50%. This is very useful for helping us to maintain ammo for our Blighted rounds. And finally, Empowering Antenna, which is the node that pairs with our Blighted turret by boosting our weapon damage by 40% for 10 seconds each time we throw our turret. Because of this node, you should be constantly throwing out your turret any chance you get to keep the damage buff active. Now that we've covered all the details of the build, I'll leave you with gameplay of it in an expedition to show how it should be played and how effective it can be. I do want to mention that my Techno is level 50, so my stats may be a bit higher than yours, but the build is still very effective, and it's the build I used to get up to about Challenge Tier 12 originally. If this build helped you out and you enjoyed the video, don't forget to consider subscribing to the channel for more Outriders content and to show your support. Thanks for watching. Take it easy, everyone.